Welcome to Healing the Tigress, a podcast of conversations and stories on Asian American Pacific Islander maternal mental health. We are your hosts. I'm Peggy, a perinatal mental health therapist.
And I'm Jasmine, a clinical pharmacist who is perinatal mental health certified. Both of us are Taiwanese American mothers who have lived experiences of postpartum depression and anxiety. It felt like we didn't see anyone who looked like us also struggling with their mental health in new motherhood. But we would go on to learn that it wasn't just us and that there was so much more to perinatal mental health.
So we created this podcast because we know that sharing these stories can begin to break the stigma of mental health in our community, and we want to help heal the inner tigress in all AAPI parents. Let's get started. As many of you know, we started this podcast because of our own experiences with postpartum depression and anxiety. We wanted to create a resource and safe space for AAPI moms to come to listen to other mental health stories of people who might look like them or have common cultural thread. But we also know that you do not need to have depression or anxiety or any other diagnosis to deserve seeking mental health wellness in parenthood. What's important is destigmatizing the shame around seeking help and understanding that help can look different for each person.
Our guest today is someone who found help in postpartum in a community she did not expect to find and has gone on to pay it forward by creating a space where help can continue to be offered to moms across the spectrum of motherhood. Please help us welcome Stella Falkner, an entrepreneur, mother, certified mental health peer specialist, postpartum doula, lactation education, and maternal mental health advocate. Stella is the founder of Dowa, a platform designed to bridge community support with clinical care to ensure every mother at any stage of parenting has accessible, expert-backed guidance and support. Welcome to the podcast, Stella. Would you please give us a little insight into your cultural background and where you are in your motherhood journey?
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm Korean American, born and raised in New York, and I have a 4-year-old son.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Before you founded Dowa, there was a community that supported you through a very vulnerable season of new motherhood and mental health challenges. Could you tell us more about how you found that community and what made its support so profoundly life-saving, as you describe it, for you?
Yeah, so I actually ended up going to what's called a day program, sometimes also known as a PHP, partial hospitalization program. And I ended up going there because a close friend of mine who is also a mother noticed that something was off just through text messages and knew about this program and got me there. When I got there, I met a group of mothers ranging from pregnant up to children up to 3 years old. And I really credit these women with really changing the trajectory of my recovery and ultimately saving my life because I didn't know any of them. And they welcomed me with open arms, no judgment, and just really created a safe space for me to get better. I remember the first day I got there, I didn't want to be there, of course. And I almost left after the first day, but there was one mother who came up to me before I left and told me that she understood where I was coming from, and why I felt the way that I did, and that she hoped to see me the next day. And I did come in the next day and the day after that, and I sat next to her every day. And when she discharged, I told her that she saved my life. I don't think I would have come back if she hadn't come up to me in that way. And when I discharged, I tried to pay it forward before I left as well by talking to the people who were coming in. And when I came out of there, I wanted to, as you said, pay it forward. So I became a certified mental health peer specialist so that I could help other moms through recovery. And these mothers that I met in that program, I'm still friends with today. I still talk to them, we still support each other. And it's because of them that I started Dowa, and I don't think I'd be here without them. So I was lucky to find a community like that. I know not everyone gets to find a community like that. So I'm just very grateful.
Yeah. There are there are very few programs like that, I feel like, in the country overall, where it's dedicated postpartum support for moms that are trying to recover, because mental health care across the board can look so different from patient to patient, and the specific perinatal and postpartum experience, the things you need might be so different than somebody else coming in for different circumstances and backgrounds. So it's so nice that you were able to find a program like that gave you dedicated help.
Yeah, so the way that these programs work is that it's 5 hours a day, 5 hours a week. So it's very, very intensive. And I was not someone who had a ton of experience with therapy. So it was like just throwing myself into the wolves kind of thing. But it was a program specifically for perinatal stage, and as you guys probably know, like you mentioned, there aren't that many programs like this out there. Certainly not programs where they take you where you have a child up to 3 years old. Most of the perinatal programs out there, it's like pregnancy to the first year postpartum, right? So I was past that stage. So I was very lucky to be able to go into a place where I could be surrounded by people in a similar stage of life to me, even if our diagnosis wasn't all the same. And there were definitely moments of like frustration or feeling like I didn't belong there because I didn't have a PMAD, I didn't have a newborn necessarily, and so there were moments where I questioned if this was the right place for me. But ultimately, it was the right place for me because we had that commonality of all being women, all being new mothers, all navigating life while caring for this new human being, no matter how old that child was. We were all there because of our different backgrounds and stories. Even if you did have a PMAD or didn't, like whatever the reason was for you being there, we all came with like our baggage, right? Our history of our childhood, of our relationship with our parents or family members or work or whatever it is. And all of that really impacts how you handle this stage of new motherhood. And so that was really interesting to hear about everyone's different backgrounds. A lot of type A women, I'll say. And I think a lot of us were surprised that we were there, surprised that we were struggling. And so that was really interesting too. I mean, there was just like a lot that I learned when I was there.
Was it hard to apply or get in because you said someone told you about it and then all you were like, okay, like maybe let me try it out. But were there like hoops to jump through, or did you need referral from a provider or something to get into a program like that?
No, there was a lot of conversations that needed to be had. One thing that is unfortunate about this program and probably a lot of these types of programs is that they don't take really insurance. And so a lot of it's out of pocket. So I actually ended up going on like a payment plan to like pay it off over a year. But even that, people wouldn't have, there's a lot of people who wouldn't even have the means to do that. So that's something that I find very frustrating, to be honest. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of PHPs are designed to be a diversion from hospitalization. So most insurance plans will try to cover them, but the ones that you're specifically talking about, especially for the postpartum population, we know that there's so few and far between in the nation. So what I'm hearing also is that you probably went to an out of network one where they're just like you either have the benefit to kind of reimburse or not. And then the intensive outpatient is a step down from partial. So then going from 5 days a week to maybe 3 days or half day. But the goal of a lot of these programs, which is so great for women and mothers, is you don't have to be overnight in a hospital. You get the treatment during the day. You get to go home. You get to be with your children and your baby during this recovery process, but you still get the benefits of the group therapy, of the intensive support from any medical professional. And it's unfortunate that it's not always covered by insurance, or insurance may say, hey, do they meet criteria anymore, and cut it short, like you said with the friend that you made that got discharged. Maybe it's because she was there first and longer, but there's also such a time limit to that. And it is like, here's this community, and it's really kind of sounds like it's on the onus of the patient to be like, oh, how do I extend that community? How do I keep having that community outside of the hospital?
Yeah. I mean, I think when I went, there really aren't any programs like this that are in network. I think I think there's one now, but it's like fully virtual. which has its pros and cons. And they're part of a larger like IOP that kind of tries to treat everyone. But again, like I don't think that I would have been covered because my child was past 1 years old, right? So even if they are in network, I wouldn't have been eligible. And then I would have to be in like a group with just like all adults. And I think that would have been an awful experience for me. so, so yeah, I mean, I'm very lucky that I live in a state that has this program.
Yeah, it's totally not the same thing
Yeah.
in the all comprehensive like IOP kind of program. Like we've said, perinatal is so specific, and that whole thing you're saying about if your child is over one, even within depression, we had an episode titled "Postpartum Depression Can't Be Boxed into a Year." Like it's such a strange constraint to put on something like that. So yeah, it takes a while for people to really recover and refine their bearings and identity. Yeah.
Yes.
And I think in your story too, because you didn't have specifically a perinatal mental health disorder, and because it was a diagnosis of C-PTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, that also makes sense where, hey, maybe this is something that was happening after that first year that isn't really, again, boxed into this postpartum box, so to speak. And so I know that you've shared that you didn't have a perinatal mental health disorder, and that postpartum and motherhood can still be really difficult with or without one, and that yours was the experience of that CPTSD that you are proudly recovering from. And we actually have not had a discussion of CPTSD before on the podcast. So could you give our listeners a general explanation of what CPTSD is?
Yeah, so my understanding, because I'm not a clinical expert, my understanding of complex PTSD is that it's a series of events and or even emotions built up over time. And so when you're treating it, it's not like treating PTSD, which is often like one singular event that you can focus on. So I'm not saying that it's like super easy to treat PTSD, but my understanding is that it's easier to treat than complex PTSD because you don't have like a specific moment that you can like really focus on to recover from. And the reason why I'm speaking about it in that way is that I did EMDR to recover. And so I remember my EMDR therapist telling me that complex PTSD, it just takes a little bit longer to recover from with EMDR because you're almost like compiling a bunch of different emotions and moments over time. Whereas with PTSD, you can focus all your sessions on that one specific moment to, recover from that situation that happened.
Yeah. Have you read the book What My Bones Know by Stephanie Fu or heard of it? It is a memoir of a complex PTSD survivor, and she's also AAPI. And she describes it as like, because kind of like you said, like PTSD is like one really major traumatic thing in your life that you keep kind of coming back to, and it's kind of holding you down. But all these moments that have happened pertaining to that event, you have the adrenaline rush, the fight or flight response, and your body sort of encodes all of that, and you're trying to sort of break that down and help you heal from it. But with complex PTSD, a lot of times these could be childhood things built up over time. It could be victims of abuse, of negligence, like things like that, where it's constantly happening to you over and over. Sometimes you don't even know it when you're in the moment that these are traumatic events that are happening to you, but your body develops this fight or flight response over time where you're just building up all this adrenaline cortisol to the state that like it's like, oh, now this is like your baseline where you always feel these things, and you can't tell the difference between what's reality, real fight or flight versus this is a trigger coming from constantly being exposed to these sorts of events happening over and over. That might seem innocuous at the moment, but when you look back on it, you're like, wow, this has built up over time. So to deconstruct that and try to break that down to figure out what moment is causing me to feel anxious or have a panic attack or have this manifest in this sort of PTSD way, it can be really hard, like you said, to treat because you might not actually be able to identify the real root cause or source of why this is happening to you. So this author has she's done a lot of research and background into and she talks about doing EMDR too and how it was kind of helpful, kind of not, because you couldn't even figure out which moment to focus on to begin with and stuff, but it starts to begin to break down that as Asian Americans, this is one of those things where I feel we wouldn't think that this was a traumatic thing that happened in our life. But as we start entering therapy or talking about these things and it comes up, the pieces start to sort of click a little bit. And I think sounds like for you, motherhood opened that up. It suddenly led you to healing and to breaking that down. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had like a final triggering event after like years of stuff built up. And that final triggering event, yeah, I just completely just fell apart. It's like I had been and holding on and just keeping it together for X amount of time. And then that final thing was just kind of like the nail in the coffin type of thing. And I mean, as they say, everyone has their breaking point, right? And I guess that was my breaking point. And I think that compounded with being a new mom, I think I couldn't hold on any longer. Could I have held on if I wasn't a mom at the time? I don't know. Maybe. I'll never truly know. But in some ways, I'm grateful that I was a mom because I was able to get the kind of help that I did. And I wouldn't have gotten that had I not had a child. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I think you've been pointing out that you didn't personally experience what we might classify as a perinatal mental health disorder. And, that teaches us that not every difficulty in postpartum is necessarily comes with a diagnosis. So why do you think that distinction matters though? Especially when it comes to validating people's experiences and encouraging them to seek support.
Well, some situations are PMADs, right? And so I feel like there are maybe certain processes and protocols to treat that. I don't like the idea of looping everything as a PMAD because, like, let's say for example, you had a traumatic birth, okay, and then you go into a depression or whatever it is, and like, oh, that's a PMAD. By just calling it a PMAD, it almost it's not saying it doesn't put the blame on you necessarily, but it takes the blame away from the people that put you in that situation. So that's why I don't like saying everything is a PMAD because it's like it like removes accountability, right? So that's my issue with it. But I also don't like the acronym because it has the word mad in it, which I'm sure you probably heard before from other people. But it's like we're women. It's like, oh, you're mad. I'm like, no, we're not. You know what
They
I mean?
technically changed it to PMHD, yeah, which would probably still be pronounced I don't know.
PMHD now.
Because it used to be perinatal mood and anxiety disorder, which limits it, versus like PMHD, which is perinatal mental health
Mental
disorder.
health disorder.
Either way, it
Okay.
doesn't, it's probably,
Okay.
PMAD still sounds pretty mad, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so I just feel like this it's this big grouping. And I also feel like it takes away from what the root cause is, which again I think relates to the accountability because I don't know. It just feels like they're telling us, oh, it's just your hormones. And of course it's not just those things. And that's not necessarily what they're saying, but that's how I interpret it from like a marketing perspective.
I feel like I tell my clients this all the time that you aren't entering into motherhood in a vacuum. And so much of the work that's being done is connecting it back to things like childhood experiences and inner child work. And more often than not, I actually often can't use a PMAD as a diagnosis when I'm doing my work because there's only one that I can like legally and for insurance purposes use. And more often than not, it's so much more complicated than that. It's now you're trying to reconcile with different experiences with your parents, or now you're recognizing the big marital conflicts that you're having. And that's not necessarily a perinatal mental health disorder. It is all of the extraneous things outside of being a mother that are impacting how you are experiencing motherhood.
Yes, thank you.
Well, even like C-PTSD, it does not have its own DSM code as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a poorly understood condition. And then it further limits, I guess, to how people can get treatment, get reimbursement, fund research, I guess, if there's not even like a algorithm or sort of classification of how can you categorize it, because even the distinction between CPTSD and PTSD is very different. So there is a lot of work still to be done. Yeah.
Yeah, I did find that it was a little difficult to find someone to really help me with the CPTSD. I saw a lot of support for PTSD. And so, again, I feel lucky that I was able to find like an EMDR therapist that felt confident in her CPTSD skills. But yeah, I noticed when I got the diagnosis, was like Googling it and everything. And I noticed that there is controversy around it. And as someone who got the diagnosis, that obviously did not make me feel good. So I was like, well, what does that mean? All this controversy, like, am I going to get better? And so that made me feel like, oh, maybe there isn't real help for me out there, or maybe like I can't get real treatment. Like, yeah, it was confusing. And I feel like some of that kind of conversation as a patient, it really impacts your confidence in getting better. So again, just grateful that I was able to find the support that I did.
When it came to finding that support, I'm curious if it was that you got the diagnosis of CPTSD, then went to the PHP, or was it like, what was the timeline of getting help for CPTSD? And prior to that, did you receive any mental health support? Because it sounds like you didn't get this diagnosis until after motherhood. So I'm curious about both your process of getting the diagnosis and getting the help for it, as well as any previous experience with mental health support.
Yeah, so when I was pregnant, I was, I founded a previous company. I was there, and I was very much like, I really, people get postpartum depression or something. I got to make sure like I'm all good. So I found a therapist for the first time when I was pregnant, like before I gave birth. And I told her, I was like, I don't really know what to talk to you about. I just want to prep because I'm type A. So I just want to be prepared just in case. I don't know what's going to happen, right? So I saw her a few times before I had the baby, and that was all fine. No, nothing exciting happened. When that final incident happened, my son was about a year and a half, and I ended up going to the program. And I feel like that happened very quickly, like going into the program. And then when I discharged, I went back to that same therapist and told her more about what was going on. I mean, I was stable, right? I wasn't a risk then. So I was stable, and she's the one that diagnosed me and let me know of certain tools and types of therapists that I could go see. That's not her, because she did not have the background to treat me. And so that's how I found out about EMDR and some other ones. And then she kind of helped me kind of navigate that. Yeah. She's a wonderful therapist, wonderful person. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's especially important to know your limitations. And it sounded like she did. Like she
Hmm.
could pinpoint maybe what this was, but then to give you further support, she had to refer you to somebody else who could help you with that. But it is so helpful, I think, to know maybe what you're up against so that it has a name and you can kind of look it in the eye and say that, okay, well, let me see what I can find out about it. And like, despite you kind of sharing that, like, it was, there wasn't a lot of information and it was a little bit kind of distressing to be like, well, can I recover from this? It's a starting point, at least. And that's kind of what the author of the memoir also talks about is like, she Googled it and was like, what? There's nothing out here about this. And am I just going to have this terrible life forever? And so that kind of set off on her quest for more information and recovering and things like that too.
But
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think being able to name it was like a turning point for me, which is interesting because, I work with other mothers, and so many of them do not want to get diagnosed. And And I understand it, but at the same time, talking to you right now, I remember once I got a diagnosis and a name, I was like, okay, now I can come up with a plan,
That's your type
right?
A kicking in.
Yeah,
Like,
like I can come
what's
up
the
with a
plan?
plan of how to get past this, right?
Well, I want to pivot a little bit to talking about your passion project and what came of after your time at this PHP. And as a wellness platform that you founded, Dowa tends to meet mothers early in the stage of preparing. But I think some might realize that they might need therapy or medication or a higher level of support. How does Dowa support their members in recognizing that distinction and connecting them maybe to more intensive clinical care if necessary?
Yeah, so the cool thing about Doa is that it brings in providers from across the country, and it's not just mental health therapists. We have doulas, we have lactation educators, we have parent coaches, nutritionists, just different types of people out there that can support you with whatever it is you're going through. And I try to make sure that we had a very diverse set of providers on there. I've noticed, and maybe you've noticed this, is that in the maternal space, most of the people working in it or with the loudest mic or whatever are Caucasian and very few Asians. So I made it a point to try and get representation as much as I could. So that was like a big factor for me. And as you mentioned earlier, like I view DOA as like a bridge to clinical care. The moms that I work with, some are already in therapy or have been to programs, but there's a lot who just aren't ready, right? Whether, they don't want to get diagnosed or whatever the reason is. And so I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great if you could try out all these different providers, understand who they are, what kind of support you can get from XYZ people, different types of providers and whatnot. And we've had members, DOA members, come on our platform, go to our events and meet these providers and decide, I would love to try one-on-one care with them, right? So it's like a toe dip into getting one-on-one support, and it's really on your time when you're ready. And of course, the support that we have, it's all evidence-based, clinically informed from the providers themselves, and it's available 24/7. And I really want to make sure that it covered really all the different areas that cause anxiety or rage or overwhelm and those other mental health emotions. And so I want to have support for your body as well as parenting. I think a lot of the anxiety and overwhelm comes from like, am I doing the right thing for my child? Are they developing in the right way? Like, what do I do when they're throwing a fit and all those things? And so I view that as all connected to your mental health. And so mind, body, soul, everything is just all there for you. Again, with all presented by the providers themselves.
Maybe you can tell us like where the inspiration came from and how you put it all together, because I'm not sure. You mentioned you founded other companies before. Like, are you more of a technical experience background where you're coming from? But maybe you can also tell us like what kind of sets Doa apart from other motherhood wellness platforms.
Yeah, so my background is in tech, specifically UX design, and I've led like product design engineering and those types of departments before. What really sets Doa apart is, I think, the diversity and the breadth of coverage. We also have what some people call a panic button. And so if you're experiencing overwhelm, anxiety, sadness, we have about 10 emotions that we cover. We have a clinically proven tool that will reduce that emotion within minutes. And so that's been very helpful for a lot of people. I think that's probably the most used feature. Another thing that we have that's, I think, the most different is that we have voicemails from other mothers who've been where you are. And the mothers that recorded these, some of them messaged me saying, I ended it short because I started tearing up. But it's essentially a message to their former self, remembering what they went through. And so I've had mothers message me that they listened to these voicemails and it just exactly what they need to hear in that moment, right? Hearing the message from someone who's now on the other side. The reason why I made those was that I think about the mother who's up at 3 a.m. And it's not necessarily because she has to breastfeed or anything like that. Like she could have a 6-year-old, I don't know, but she can't sleep and she's really struggling. And we don't want her to do something that she will regret, and there's no one else to talk to. So my hope was that these voicemails would be enough to get that mother through the night until the morning where she could talk to someone. And so I think that I built this very mission driven, empathy driven. I didn't raise any money for it. I bootstrapped it myself because I wanted to stay true to why I built this. And I think that is a differentiator in itself, which is in contrast to my other companies, which is VC funded.
I love that thinking of the mom in the middle of the night, because even if you have a therapist, even if you have a psychiatrist, even if you have your mom involved, when it's 3 a.m. and you're struggling with whatever, the options of who you can turn to are so small. It's so scary. It's so scary to be alone and to be able to reach to something and hear someone's voice telling you whatever it is that you need to hear to ground yourself back down. That idea of that panic button immediately made me think of my second night in the hospital after giving birth, and my baby, I couldn't calm him down for whatever reason, and I hit a actual button to have the nurse come, and then after she was like, "Oh, you just need to burp him." I was like, "Oh." And then after she left, I was like, "There's not going to be a button at home," is what I said to my husband. Of like, what are we going to do when I don't know what to do in the middle of the night or when we're at home? So I love that you're really thinking of what is that mother like in her most vulnerable moment, and when is it? What is she going to need?
Yeah, and a lot of mental health apps out there, especially the popular ones, a lot of the voices are men. And even if they have like a family section, it's so sparse. And a lot of the stuff is not specific to motherhood. So I thought it was really important that one, we bring in the voices of mothers. I think like 99 or 95% of the providers on our platform are moms themselves. And they are people who support mothers because of what they went through too. So I just think that it's really important to be surrounded by the people that all have an aligned mission, right? And it's like clean, if that makes sense. Like financially, it's just like clean. And so yeah, I think that is what really differentiates Doa from other platforms.
Mm, I'm feeling warm fuzzies right now. It sounds so nice. Like something that I would have probably loved in my hardest times. Uh, well, I want to also go back to the idea of finding community support through support groups can feel really daunting or even just non-existent. I don't know if that's partly from some of our cultural stigmas to think like, oh, a group setting, like, and like mental health already is hard enough to talk about, not have to talk about in front of a group, like. And you might have mentioned this a little bit already, but how can we help break that barrier for mothers that might be hesitant to seek community support?
Yeah, gosh, it's so hard. I mean, the group that I'm at was in a program, so it's like a little bit different. I do find that if you're just joining mom groups and random-ish support groups, it definitely is hard. I think because I was in a clinical setting, they were really good about making sure it was like a safe space. And when you join any group, hopefully there's a moderator or facilitator. It all really, I think, hinges on that person, what kind of space that they're creating for the people within the group. We know that there's a lot of judgment, right? We know that people have their own stories and baggage. I think it's a lot of trial and error, which can seem daunting because you're already so tired. But I think the most important thing is that if it does not serve you, it is okay to leave. You do not owe anyone anything. If it's more exhausting than rewarding, get out of there. It's okay. There are great people out there. These just aren't those people. Like for you. So I think that's hard too, though, because it's like, well, I already invested this time. I don't want to invest more time and do research. Like that's exhausting as well. But long run, it's worth it. It's what's best for your mental health.
Yeah, I had a client who tried a support group for the first time, and I remember her feeling like that was too much. I'm not ready for this. And I remember being like, it's okay. It's okay if that wasn't what you needed, but you tried. And I think even being willing to try in itself is progress to say, like, okay, I'm willing to see if this is what I need right now. And it wasn't, and it's okay. Right. And maybe it wasn't the right time. Maybe it wasn't the right group, like you said. Like, are these the right people? And I think in your story, how important it was for that one person who connected with you, and then the ripple effect that happened for her to be there to make you feel safe, for then you to want to extend that to eventually creating an entire platform to be that ripple for so many others.
Yeah, and, sometimes all you need is just one person. You don't need a whole gang of people. You just need one person.
One thing I really love as you've been talking about Doa too is just some of the different things you mentioned, that a lot of the apps out there, I'm thinking already all the meditation ones with like the men and their voices, right? Or even that the cultural background of the people creating these spaces. And so really trying to be intentional about who Doa is. Is there anything else you're trying to do within Doa to provide additional support for mothers of color or even AAPI folks specifically?
So, I was looking into opening a clinic, and it's not 1,000% off the table, but it's on hold for now. I find that much as I love supporting women and mothers and families, I still need to figure out how to manage, like, my mental health around that space. I mean, you're a clinician, so and I've asked clinicians about this before, like, some of it is just so sad. It's hard, and as a clinician, like, you're trying to support all these people, it's also very draining for you, and you're a parent, and one clinician told me, like, "Oh, you give it a few years, you'll, like, I don't know, develop, a bear like, a force field or something like that, like, so, like, type of armor." And, like, a few years, man, I don't know. I just went through this whole thing, like, I need to, like, take a step back here a little bit and assess what I wanna do keep going forward. So, long story short, I'm a little bit on pause right now, trying to figure out what I wanna do, moving forward, but for now, like, I'm happy with where we're at.
Hmm. I'm also thinking too, it's like, what is your role? Obviously, as the founder, it's like you had this vision and this dream and you create it. But then maybe as Doa gets bigger or as those dreams expand, is that something that like you have someone else kind of take over this part or that part? Or you continue to be like, here's the dream. Who is the person to help execute that dream? Am I the one that's surrounded by all of the stories and the people, or do I start to get bigger and create and be the person to drive and make these other things happen? But that what that clinician said is like both true and also probably not. I think there's still days where you hear a story and you can have been in this field for decades and still be like, wow, that was a hard one. I'm gonna go sit in the bathtub and cry. Right. Like, and that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, I do have a chief clinical officer, and I do have people that I'm partnered with. But yeah, it's just a question of like, how nuts do I want to go here? I just wanted to pay it forward in the beginning, and that's still what I'm doing. And the question is like, is this enough? I've been a founder now a couple times, and one thing that I've really learned is that it's okay to say like, this is enough. Right? Like, this is what I can give and it's enough. I think it's very hard as a founder to kind of understand that because you feel like, well, no, I have to do like blah XYZ, 1, 2, 3, blah, blah, blah. And the truth is like you don't.
That hustle culture, right?
Yeah,
Like, what's the next thing? What's the next big thing? And maybe this is great the way it is already.
exactly.
And then you
Yeah.
can find something new, right?
There's
Yeah.
a Chinese proverb, and maybe Jasmine, you know this one. It's where you're drawing the snake, 画蛇 tian something. I'm saying it
天竺.
wrong. Yeah, thank you. And the story is that there's like a drawing contest, and you're supposed to draw a snake. And they're drawing a snake, and one guy's done drawing his snake, and he's like, "Well, what do I do all this time?" So he starts to add feet or legs to it, and he ends up failing the competition because it's like we asked you to draw a snake, not a lizard. But it's also this idea of like, maybe that is enough. Just draw the snake. That was perfect the way it was. Maybe Dowa is perfect the way it is, and it's meeting the needs of the people. You don't need to add feet or anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's like it kind of goes against like the perfectionism, the constantly trying to improve or be the best, or a lot of stuff we do sometimes is like overkill. And I think being a mom has actually helped me, and going through what I did, understand what my body is trying to be. Because I think I ignored a lot of it for a long time because it's like go, 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 like ambition, ambition, or ambition, or whatever it is, right? And like, I don't know, a lot of that, like I'm still ambitious and still driven and all those things, but I'm not so, maybe it's like it was my ego. Like I'm not so ego driven by it, you know? Like I'm not chasing anything, if that makes sense. Approval or accolade or whatever it is.
And some of that is culturally driven, prescribed too, right? And how much of it is that we are recovering from that part of our identities. That we've had conversations about this with some other guests, where it's like, how much of it is also what we've grown up with and been conditioned to think that that is what my life should be like, and that is what I should be chasing versus what I actually want to be chasing, right? And so, I mean, that's why this space exists, is we talk about some of our Asian American layers that contribute to some of our own mental health journeys right now as parents, and as people who are recovering from people pleasing and cycle breaking and wanting to parent differently. So, yeah.
Yeah. And I think I've like really embraced this whole like year of snake, and like the shedding, and as we go into the year of the horse, and this like 9 year that people are talking about, like I'm like yeah, yes, that makes a lot of sense to me. Like I can feel it happening, you know what I mean? And so I think that with all like everything I've learned over the past few years through my mental health journey, through being a mother, through being surrounded by wonderful people and the support I've had, and some not so wonderful people. I've just learned so much. And I know that I wouldn't have learned all the things that I have if I didn't go through the experience that I did. And it was an awful experience. No one should ever have to go through that type of experience. But like, look at all these new people that I know who are like lifetime friends now, who saved my life, who knew nothing about me. It's just like incredible. And it's not something that I really understood growing up, especially as like a Korean American. But it was very much like we're the other and we have to like protect our own a little bit, or like we're American but not American. And I just feel like more open and free now.
I love how you tied it back to the lunar year of the shedding of the snake, because like all the things I've been hearing about this transition from the year of the snake to the horse is like, well, if the snake is shedding its skin, what's the horse doing? It's going forward. It's forward momentum. It's also a fire horse. That horse is on
Yeah,
fire. It's
it's on
going
fire.
forward. Hopefully that means many good things for all of us.
Yes, definitely.
I love that cross cultures, even the East Asian cultures, like we still have this understanding, mutual understanding of these things between us. Like it's not it's open to interpretation across, of course, but like the fact that we can still come together on and understand the meanings behind it, I love that. And while you were talking about the moms that leave those messages for her past self, and now that she's on the other side, I was thinking, well, that's actually how we close our episodes, is that we ask our guests to reflect back, and in the spirit of healing her inner tigress, like what would you go back and tell her now?
So hard. I mean, because there's like so many things I would want to say, but as annoying as it would be for me to hear this back then, it would be like the only way is getting through it, right? Just keep moving forward. Just put one foot forward each day. Just think about, I'm going to get up tomorrow morning. That's it. Just think about in like days and hours. That's all you can do, especially if you're in like the terrible state that I was in. It's just about getting through to the next day. And just the only way through.
Sometimes that's all you got to do is take it break it down and make it smaller and more bite-sized and enough for you to digest, right?
Yeah. But
And
there
that
is one thing that I do want to do is that I just want to say thank you to like everyone who supported me. Even I have friends who messaged me during that time. I never messaged them back. And when I finally did message them back and I say, sorry, I just couldn't talk. And they said, it's totally okay. You know, I assumed something was up and I knew you'd get back to me eventually. And like, wow, what a how incredible, you know, that they just kind of understood that even though I never messaged them back. I just the patience that people had in my life, people who I knew, people I met, so much understanding and empathy and just yeah, thank you. And of course, thank you to everyone who went through something like this beforehand and have continued to talk about it and just continue to support. It's just it just makes you really be grateful and believe in like the human race during this, during this time, political time. But yeah, just I will never be able to say thank you enough.
I get the sense that what I'm hearing is that motherhood cannot exist without community.
No.
It just can't.
Yeah.
and it just tells me that you had the right kind of friends because they could understand that and give you the grace and not need an explanation, because I think that's a true sign of a good friend and someone who's truly is actually supporting you and on your side. So, Stella, thank you so much for your time today. Where can our listeners find more about you and the work that you do, or Dowa? Like, can you give us a little bit about that so people can know where to go?
Yep. You can find us on Instagram at doahealth.com and our website, doahealth.com. And you can also search for our app on the Google Store or the Apple Store. Just type in Dowa Health.
Yeah, and that's spelled Dowa for Dowa. Can you tell us what that stands for? I know there's a little story behind that too.
Yeah, so Dowa comes from the Korean word tojo, which means help.
I love that, especially tying some of your culture into it. It's beautiful. Thank you
Thank you.
again.
Thanks so much for having me.
We want to thank you deeply for tuning into this episode of Healing the Tigress. The more we share these stories, the more we can help our AAPI mothers and partners. If you enjoyed this episode and our mission, you can help us out in the following ways. Follow our show wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a rating and or a review, and share our podcast with a friend.
We also encourage you to follow us on Instagram at Healing the Tigress, where we hope to build a community of healing tigresses and give you updates on what's coming. And if you want more bonus episodes, please check out our show notes for how to subscribe to our exclusive content. Or you can also head over to our Buzzsprout page at healingthetigress.buzzsprout.com. We are not for profit. We are here to help our community, but any support you give us is so deeply appreciated. Above all, thank you from the bottom of our hearts for being here.
Healing the Tigress is produced and edited by Peggy and Jasmine.
Music for this show is remixed by Dr. Tony Huynh of Tony Mixes.
Our intro music is a cover of You and Me by Z Avi, played by our co-host Peggy.
Our outro music is a cover of Green Island Serenade, played by Jasmine's sister.
Cover art design is by Dr. Angela Chung.